In this video, we're going to be adding terrain to our level, modifying it and adding a couple of assets and starting to block out our level sketch that we've created. There's a couple of different ways that we can go about building a level, and I'm going to just introduce to you how I'll be building this prototype level that I'm working on. Because it's an outside scene, it's a village, and I want trees and forests and mountains and rivers and stuff, we're taking an organic approach, which is to start with terrain in our world, and then to modify the terrain by raising it or lowering it. So raising it or lowering it, depending upon what we need in the world. So it's very organic. And then adding to that our assets, and I was very excited to show you the assets Mike has created for us, so we can have our houses and making a village by dropping the asset into a particular location. So that's the main way that we're going to be doing in this game, and certainly the first way. Another way that I believe we'll be doing, this is more for an organic look to it, organic. And then if you have more of an inside look, a dungeon look, a house look, it's more of an approach of having modular pieces that can snap together in a predictable way. So you might have a floor piece. You know, here's the player standing on this floor. So from an art point of view, we create this as an asset, and then we can duplicate that and have it sitting next to that other one, and then do that again and repeat. Then we can have some pillars, for example, that we make as a modular piece. So there's a pillar, and let's put a little thing on the end of the pillar. And then we can take that same pillar, and we know it has a consistent height and a consistent shape to it, and then it might be that we can put pillars all around and have some modification on the pillars. So some of the pillars we go in and break and so on. So that's more of a snapping it together, modular pieces type approach. So as a starting point, we're going to be focusing on this organic terrain approach. And the first thing I'm going to do is just remove those extra assets that I dropped in there from Mikey's asset pack. So I was just playing around with that. We don't need those at the moment. I'm also going to remove my enemies. I don't need those at the moment. I'm going to leave my my empty just here so that we can put more back in the future. I've got environment. What else have I got in there? I've got my inspiration screen. That's cool. We'll leave that in there. We need our inspiration. Might just push it back a little bit. And I'm going to drop another few inspiration screens in there at some point soon. The player's okay. We'll move him around as need be. But it looks like our scene here is pretty nice and empty. Now, a lot of you were asking on the forum, why did they use a cube? Why was that the first thing they used as their ground? That doesn't make sense. We'll use a cube because we're putting cubes in as placeholder elements to run around, and we just didn't want to introduce the concept of terrain just yet, or even ground planes. Just at that point, we wanted to make it super simple, and we're ready to talk about that now. We're ready to talk about terrain. So I'm going to delete that. Thank you, my friend. You served us well. We're going to do something really cool, is add. So if you go into create a 3D object, we're going to create terrain. You get this gigantic big white thing in here, which is cool. And there's a couple of things we need to do right from the start. We've established on our team a protocol for the terrain, because there's something you can and can't do. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a familiarity with the terrain and go through that. Some of you are already terrain gurus, but for those of you who are a little bit fresh to terrain or need a refresher, we're going to do that. So if you see when you've clicked on terrain, under your inspector here, you'll see that the very first button on the left has an arrow on it. That's basically giving you the ability to raise, whoop, or if you hold down shift, to lower the terrain, which is really cool. You can get in there and paint some stuff. Now you can see I'm still clicking. I'm holding down shift and I'm clicking, but it's not going any lower. So terrain, given that it's showing you the height of something, doesn't actually go lower than itself. And can you guys think of a problem that's going to create for us? So you might have guessed the problem it's going to create for us is if we need to create something like a ditch or a riverbed or an ocean or anything below this level, we just can't do it. So the solution, I can do that though, the solution is that we on our project are going to start our terrain at a height of minus 100. So minus 100, so it's all the way down there underneath, but we still want sea level to be at 100. So if I click on this button here, this is to increase, to paint the height to a specific level, and we can go down here to 100. So type in 100 for the height and click flatten, bloop, and that essentially has flattened it up to the height of 100. Now I'm just going to undo that and show you if I was to click here and make a nice big brush size. This is set to 100. If I go in there and paint, then it gets to 100 and then it stops at that height. So this is a really cool tool. If you know how high you want something to be, if you want something to be uniform or flat, then you can click on this second button here and take it up to a specified height that you can type in just here. Or you can click the flatten button, blink, and it'll take everything up to that height. So now at the 0 point, you can see our assets over here. We're at the 0 point before. Our player, we'll click on him, jump in. He's standing right at 0 for Y, which is excellent. And so now we've got sea level, but if our heart desires, back onto terrain, click on there, make my brush size. I'll explain these in a bit of a moment. Then I can hold down shift and I can have it go below the level. As ugly as that looks, but that is super exciting that we're able to do that because we can make lakes and ponds and all sorts of exciting undergroundy type things. The other thing I'd like to do while I'm here is put the terrain in a sensible position. So our player is very close to the origin 0, 0, but our plane, that's our bottom left-hand corner. For me, I'm going to feel comfortable with this particular level, putting it roughly in the middle. So my midpoint's going to be a little bit of a focus, and I'll have stuff around the outside, because if we zoom in to have a look at my inspiration, there's a lot of action going on in the middle, and I've got these mountains around the outside, basically saying stuff's not happening on the outside. It's all happening in the middle. So that's what I want to create in terms of where my ground plane is positioned, my terrain is positioned. The next thing I'm going to do is give myself a little bit of ammunition in terms of changing the color, in other words, changing the texture of my terrain. So I've gone and grabbed just some basic textures for you guys. I've uploaded it as well so you have access to it. For the textures, I've also put in some reference images for me. These are things that are inspiring me. So if you want to go grab those from the resources, open that up, unzip that, and then drag them into, let's just go have a look where we drag it into first here. This seems pretty good. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to create under here a new folder that is called Rick's Village. Rick's Village, where we can start to put some of these things that I'm going to be using in my village so that it doesn't become a big mess at that scenes level in our project just there. I'm going to drag these in, blink, and I can do a little bit more sorting later on. I can sort them into textures and into reference images, etc. For now, this is okay. I don't want to get too bogged down in structure just yet. I know, as I've said in the past, Ben loves that stuff, so he'll be so excited to come in and say, hang on, that doesn't belong next to that, and he'll help clean it all up for us. So the first thing we're going to do is give ourselves a little bit of texture ammunition, and the way we want to do that with terrain is to head in here to little paintbrush, click on the paintbrush here. This is our paint texture. Now, at the moment, nothing really is going to happen when we do that because we haven't loaded up any ammunition. We haven't added any textures. So down here, if you click the Edit Textures button, Add Texture, and you can see in the albedo that we've got a slot. I'm going to drag in Green Lush into there. And for now, I will leave the size. I'll come back into that in a moment and see how it goes. And because it's the first thing that we've added in here, it says, I think you want to make the entire thing that green grass. And that's fair enough. Let's just play and see how ugly it looks. So we get a little bit of context for, whoa, look at that. That's great. And can you guys figure out why I'm not moving here? This is a good test for you. Why is my character not moving? You guessed it. We'll get out of here because he doesn't know that this is walkable. So I click on my terrain and go to layer and make that walkable. Now if I go back in to the game, I can move around. And this grass looks pretty hideous, which is fine. This is all placeholder stuff for the moment, super placeholder, but we can make it look a little bit less hideous by changing the size of it. So if we go back into the paintbrush, into paint texture, make sure we're clicked on that grass texture, edit texture, and to go in here, we'll change the size of it, the scaling of it. So we'll see what happens when we go to 5. Okay, it looks a little bit better, still super big though. So what happens when we go to 2? We're going to see a lot more pronounced tiling when we're further out. Tiling is where you can see this repeating line, repeating line, repeating line. But the idea is to make sure you always go back in and say, how's it going to look for the player? And it is super tiley, but for now, it's okay. It's grass. It's a starting point. We don't want it to be, when we've got just a big, huge, big flat plane, we don't need to finesse the texture too much just yet. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to add another couple of textures to the, click edit here, add texture. Add texture, we'll chuck in some mud, blink, and we'll follow our lead from before. We'll make that 2 and 2 as well. Add that. So now we've got mud here as another one. Edit texture, add texture. We'll throw in some water, and you can see for the water I've created this wonderful just blue blueness. Doesn't really, I probably don't need to worry about that because it's just one solid. So I'll leave it as is for now. Actually, we'll be thorough. We'll make it the same. Okay, so now we've got, back in here, we've got 1, 2, 3. Not too bad for now. I've got a darker mud, and you know what? We'll do the darker mud when we have that need, when the need arises. So this is what we've got. We've got a terrain, and we've got a couple of textures to be able to paint it. We've talked a little bit about raising and lowering. Let me show you that again. So if we're back on the raise lower terrain button, you've got 2 twiggles here. Twiggle is the official terminology for a slider. You've got brush size. If you put your brush size down to 1, let's go back over near my player so we can see. You'll see that it does just a very narrow, just 1 unit of putting stuff up. Good for making spikes. Who wants some spikes? And then the other thing we've got, I did one click too many there, sorry. The other thing we've got here is opacity. Opacity is basically how fast it's going to go when you move around. In terms of when you're painting over this area. So if you put it 3, it's pretty slow. If you put it at 100, it's going up quick sticks. So you've got those 2 options there. It's good to have this a little bit lower so things don't go flying up to the skies when you click on anything. And then in terms of the size of it, it's going to depend what it is that you're trying to create at that point in time. We also talked about if you hold down Shift, then you can go downwards, make some nice big puddles, areas to put your puddle. We talked about the paint to a height, which is going to say, let's put it up to 10 and see how that looks. We're going backwards to 10. This is interesting, actually. You know what? I hadn't considered this. I'll ask you again, can you guys figure out what's going on here? I put it to 10 and it went backwards. So basically, the height at the moment is at 100. We did that because we lowered it to 100. And then we put it all the way up to 100 in terms of our painting of it. So we need to say 110 if we want it to go up by 10. And then that is the effect of doing that. So you start to get a feel for it. 10 is going to be way above where the player is going to be able to reach or even see. And what I'm going to do at this early point is just give myself a benchmark so I can use it as time goes on. What happens if I put it up by 2? And put it just behind the player? Let's see what happens with our camera at that point. Okay, so you can still see the player reasonably well when it's at 2. What happens when I'm still going to say in play, so these changes won't be kept. We'll put it up to 4 and see what happens. Okay, I'm just doing that so that, poor player, got a bit squashed there. Back to the player. Okay, when it's at 4, he is just out of visibility. Okay, so that's giving us good context for our heights. And a lot of what we're doing in this early stage of making our level is getting a feel for heights and distances, etc. So we know 4 is going to give us a pretty decent sized lip just there. Excellent. So we'll flatten that down. I'll just Control Z to undo that, or Apple Z. Command, I believe it is, on the Mac. You can see I'm a PC guy. Hi to all you Mac users out there. Thanks for joining us. Now, our next step, so we've played around with that a little bit, and we've painted textures. We talked about that. Again, brush size, target strength is a little bit different. If we have a look at, we'll put our target strength way, way, way down. What happens? It's very, very faint. We put it all the way up high. It's very not faint, very thick. And then opacity is having a similar impact. How fast it flows, how fast it comes out, how fast it reaches that target strength, and then brush size obviously is how big the brush is going to be. Okay, the other thing I didn't mention on there is that you can use different brush types from these areas here. So if you want to have it look a little bit more organic rather than just trying to plop it all down in one big hit, so we can paint it like that. You can also do that when it comes to raising and lowering your terrain. Boink, boink, boink. Okay, so use those with caution. There's a couple more here we're not going to get to just yet. We're not going to talk about placing trees and painting details just at the moment, but those things will come into play a little bit later on. And what I'm going to do now is rough out an area. Looking at my sketch, I'm going to take one moment that's a little bit more than a game screen or two, and I'm just going to rough out how I want that to look in terms of proportions and sizes, just to get our sizes right. So I'm going to take my mud texture here, put it on all the way down to brush size 2, and just do a little bit of, this is what I think the village green should be like in terms of size. So I'm trying to replicate this inside green area here, just to say it's going to be a pivotal part of my level. So let's see if we can get that right. Just jump back into the game. My goal here is just to see whether it feels like a good size. So I'd run over there, that would be the side of it. Run back in here, fight, fight, fight. That seems not too bad. That's what I had in my mind in terms of the feeling for it. And to make it even more comprehensive, I'm going to go down into my world objects, click on the village here, and find a house or two. Put a house there. Another house over on the side. I think I painted this texture a little bit wacky here. I wanted it to be a little bit straighter, a little bit more of a square. Hey, you have dirt going into your house, don't you? Leading up there. At this stage, the idea with the texturing is just to do it indicative. Don't try to do final art just yet. Things are going to move around. We might say, hey, that house doesn't belong there. So you don't want to get too anchored to a particular, you don't want to be too polished just yet. That's going to come soon. I'm going to put down a couple of assets just to give us a feel for how this is. Where's that other house I'm looking for? A house with fence. That one's excellent. Okay, we'll put that there. It'll consume a bigger area, so I can't just go running up through there. Let's see how that feels. Okay, oh, it feels a little bit too tight, the gap between here. Oh, not too bad. How do I go when I run? Oh, that's great. Look at that. Clever Mikey making that so I can not be too blocked there. That's pretty good. In terms of sizes, I just want to see what is my distance and sizes, so that I can then get there and say, great, now I can block out the rest of this. And to do a little bit of a river, for example, if the river is going to be, according to my map, it's going to be over the other side here. That would be modifying the terrain. Click on, and while I remember you guys, I'm just going to grab these houses and put them underneath environment, or else I'll forget. So I'm going to go raise and lower terrain. I will click probably a little bit bigger. We'll go 11. And I'm holding down Shift, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to do it a clever way. I'm going to set this a height of 95 and see how that goes. Paint us a little river through here. Okay, so that's just going to get, generally getting some positioning. We're just doing it really fast and loose at the moment. Up it goes, the river goes up that way, heads down here, and then it's going to wrap in through there. This may or may not be the right height. I'm just trying to get a little bit of blocking out the level. So I've blocked out this moment just here, where we've got the houses, the village green, and the river that runs next to these houses. And I'd like for you to do the same in your level. Rough out one area, add in textures and some assets, and take one of the moments from your game. So the moment I've got is the village green. There's going to be a fight there. Got the river next to it and a couple of houses. Take a screenshot and share that in the discussions. So good luck with that. Don't go overboard. There's no need to create your entire level just yet. In the next video, we're going to go into a lot more detail for the rest of the level, mapping that out, blocking that out, and starting to get some detail in there. For now, just work on one area, and I will see you in the next video.